Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, host of Inner Edison. What I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. Today's guest is Tony I'm going to mess that up, Martignetti. Did I get it close?
You got it perfectly.
That's all right. I can do that because nobody ever gets my last name right. So, it's one of those things. We'll work it out today. And again, I apologize for messing up your name if I did do that.
Word.
But I am a redneck. So what are you going to do? I am, man. I grew up in Modesto, California, actually Turlock, small Central Valley town, bad side of town after my dad died, so yeah, I can be a redneck. I worked on a dairy, my grandparents' dairy. So I can say that. All right. I was in the sun, would get a redneck. There you go. All right. That's the reason. All right. There's always something behind when people call you certain names that not necessarily means it's racist. They just mean that's what that person did or whatever. And we'll just leave it at that and move on. Let's talk about you. A lot of my listeners are not going to know who Tony is right there. So why don't you kind of quickly introduce yourself to my listeners so they know who we're talking to?
Awesome. So first of all, I'll just start by saying, Ed, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here. And just to give you a quick intro as to who I am and what I do, I came from the world of biotech, working in finance and strategy roles. And I now work with leaders across the spectrum of many different fields, entrepreneurs and leaders who are feeling unfulfilled, stuck, and feeling like they need something else in their lives. And so what I do is I help them to see the new possibilities. I often talk about it as helping them to climb the right mountain, because oftentimes they come to me when they feel as though, gosh, I've been, climbing this mountain in my life, and I feel like I'm not liking where I'm ending up.
All right. So I really want to hit on that subject today because one of the reasons is I've been in the mortgage industry for 20 some years, right? Seen highs and lows. And with the last couple of years was so crazy. We did 10 years of business in 1 year. I lost amazing processors, just done with the industry. Just like, I'm burnt out. I can't do this. I had one young one who said, I'm going to go work with children because this is just too stressful. I'm thinking, work with children? That had to be really bad for this industry to get you to go work with children. I'm not saying that, it's a calling, and we'll just leave it at that. And that's what she's like, this is not my calling, Ed. I know it's yours. And it's not necessarily my calling. I just really like helping people build personal wealth through home ownership. But even myself, I see that there's so much opportunity to do so many more things out there than just what I've been doing for the last period of time. So how can you help people see that? Because you say I'm climbing the wrong mountain or just climbing the same mountain for so long that they're like, I need a difference, right? Most people these days, from what I read before, is like they change their career every 5 years. Well, if you own a company and you're building a business, you're not changing it every 5 years. You're revamping it maybe every 5 years to a different way. But so how do you help people get there?
Yeah, I mean, the starting point is really to recommit to what it is that you started for. I mean, there's a reason why you got into the business that you're in or into the career you're in, and really get back and take an inventory as to what it is that got you started on this path initially. Were there things that you liked about it that you really wanted to lean into now? Because maybe there's some truth in that you want to understand. It's not about throwing away everything and starting anew. Instead, it's about really reflecting on the past. I often think of it as like time travel. You reflect on the past before you start building that future that you're envisioning, that you want to create. And then you come back into the present and think about, what can I do now? What can I do now with these new revelations that I've taken? Sometimes, like you insinuated a minute ago, it's like, gosh, like it might be as simple as just like doing the same role. You just need to like get out of the funk that you're in and recommit to seeing like, gosh, this is the place I want to be in. I'm on the right mountain. I just needed to look at it differently. My perspective has been cloudy and I need to think about it from a different perspective.
Right. But I also want to look at this from a perspective where, like, for myself, and I'm just going to use it because I'm here. Nobody else is here right now.
Mm.
If you look at me, and I have, 20 years of sales experience, I have 20 years of this experience, running a business, doing the whole thing. Those are all avenues that you can help other people in. And that's kind of what you figured out by when
Yeah.
you were working and go, okay, I'm going to go in this whole role of being a coach. I can help other people fulfill what they want. So how did you make that transition? And I'm trying to get here to a point where people understand that if you're at this point, how can you, self-evaluate what you should do, how you should move forward? Because I always say on here that as you get to the top, it's very lonely. You need
Yeah.
partners, you need strategic coaches, you need cornermen, whatever you want to call them. You need those people in your life to help you get through that, because I've been around people who are so lonely and they're so wealthy, but they're so lonely.
Mm.
And that's a bad place to be at.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up, because this is one thing that I've realized along my journey, and even in the interviews that I've had on my podcast, is I've come to realize that a lot of these people who create amazing businesses, the reason why they've been successful is because they've embraced the idea that you can't do this alone. You're not alone in your journey. When you are struggling on your own and thinking like, I'm the only one doing this, I'm the only one experiencing this feeling, just realize that you're not. Pretty much everyone has a moment where they're stepping back and saying, gosh, like something's not right. And even though I might have an outward view of success, my internal view of success might not be right. And that's why I often talk about, like, you have to define success on your own terms. And so when those moments come, just to come back to your initial question, where you're starting to question, you have to pause before you make any drastic movements and really say, what is it that I really want from me? Not based on what I've already navigated. Oftentimes, we get stuck into these patterns because we think this is what society wants me to do. This is what people have told me success looks like. Or maybe even like well meaning adults along their path have told you, like, hey, you should get a real job that makes money, so you don't have to struggle. But ultimately, if that doesn't align with who you are as a person, you'll continue to struggle. You'll continue to feel like there's missing pieces. So when you take that moment to pause and say, well, how do I want to use the gifts that I have in a different way that aligns with what I really, really want? You have to ask the hard questions.
And so if I came to you and I said, hey, this is where I'm at, how would you help somebody along the path? You don't have to give all your
Yeah.
secret sauces away, but I find that the more you give away, the more people come to you because they realize what you
Yeah.
actually do for them. I know a guy who gave away his, how he does all this social media for people. And then he had more people coming to him because they like, oh, I don't want to do any of this. So could you handle it for me? Right. So
Yeah.
so let's just say that somebody comes to you, they've been doing what they're doing and they're looking for something different. How do you help them to figure that out? I mean, do you have a self-assessment they do? How do you figure this out for them? Or I know they have to figure it out. It's like going to counseling. You have the answers, but you help them get there, I assume.
Well, it's great that you asked that. So first of all, I do have an assessment that I do have that people take, and it's a leader's journey assessment that really is a starting point of understanding, well, how am I feeling right now? Where are the things that I'm really struggling with? And you can find that on the website. It's at the top of the page.
And what website is that?
My website, inspiredpurposecoach.com. It's the go-to place if you want to start to experience some of the things that I've got out there, a lot of blogs and insights. So the assessment is a good starting point. But beyond the assessment, it's really one of the tools I love to share that gets people going is to expand their vision, narrow their focus. And this exercise is one of those moments where you say, okay, well, what is it that's got you stuck? What pattern am I stuck in? How can you step away from that pattern and look at what other possibilities, given what you've accumulated in terms of your skill sets, your strengths? Where could you apply this in a different way? And at this point, we're not getting into a place of, okay, well, I need to make a decision. I need to get this to be perfect. It's about exploration. So expand your vision is about looking at possibilities. And then once we've looked at those possibilities, Then we get into narrowing our focus, which is to say, gosh, now I know what I want to double down on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be the next step that I'm going to take that will move me into action. Because when you get that clarity, this is where success comes from. It comes from this ability to say, I'm laser focused on this next step. Anything else that's not part of this next step, it's a no. And I'm going to do this until I figure out whether this is the right course of action or not. And one of the things that is part of this exercise is to think of it as an experiment. You're not going to go into this with the expectation I'm going to burn all my boats and throw away all the my oars and just expect this is going to be the course of action forever. Nothing's permanent. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this, which is to say you can make a step and you can also reverse that step almost always. So I'll give that caveat. So keep that in mind. Experiment your way to that next thing that you want to do. But first, you have to step away from what you're doing so you can find that clarity. And that's when I work with people, that's what it's about. It's exploration. It's thought, getting your thoughts going so you can see possibilities and then execute on those possibilities. Because knowledge without action is useless.
Right. Yeah. What are you doing without, knowledge,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yeah. And I mean, it's hard for people, first of all, to ask for help. They think that they should just be successful and not have to worry about anything. But I want to go back to what you said about 10 minutes ago or whenever it was, when you were saying how, the definition of success. What is your definition of success? Because yours could be totally different than mine.
Yeah.
Or this time in my life versus 10 years from now or 20 years ago, because, it doesn't always mean that your pocketbook is the biggest thing or you're driving the Range Rover or Lamborghinis. It just depends on what that is to you. Sometimes it's having enough time between business and home life that you have that time. You got to figure that out. And that's your definition. You don't go off of other people's definition. And I'm not going to, Grant Cardone or in those other people, their definition is something totally different than my definition. And that's okay. That's for them. But this is for me. And I think one of the things that people get caught up in is what that definition is, because they go off of what other people say instead of what works for them.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think that's where, we need to start to assess where we are in our different points of life and say, okay, what is my definition of success right now? And start to plan to work towards that. And gosh, like when you start to make that progress towards your what it is you want, then you up level, and then you come to this place of, okay, do I want to continue to to set a new bar for myself, to do something different, or am I satisfied with what I've got? Am I going to continue on this path I'm on? Who knows? It's really depends on the purpose, the person that their personal choice. And one of the concepts around this, which I love to share, is gap versus gain thinking, which is something that comes from Dan Sullivan, the person who started Strategic Coach, which is this program. What I love about this gap versus gain thinking is that if you're always worried about what you're missing in life, then you'll never be satisfied. You'll never be fulfilled. But if you think about how far you've come, and you kind of get that gratitude of, gosh, look how far I've come from last year. Look how far I've come from last week. Then you start to build momentum from that space. And it's a powerful mindset shift that allows you to see that you're comparing yourself to who you were yesterday and not to someone else.
Yeah. Well, and again, you still have to set what those things are for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking beforehand about podcasts and how many you've done and how many, what I do and all this stuff. And I hired some people to cut up all my stuff, put on social media because I don't have enough time. And they're like, when we said to get content, now you've done a little too much. But for me, right, because they're like, we take this off your plate, you're supposed to stop, not add something else. I'm like, you don't understand. When you take something away from me, that gives me room to add something else to go to the next level and move. Because for me, I don't know because everybody asks me, why do I do Inner Edison Podcast? Well, first of all, the main reason I did it is because my coach, Steve D. Sims, he was like, Ed, you hate making mistakes. I'm like, oh, I have no problem making mistakes. My team, I have no problem with them making mistakes. I make sure. And then I started thinking about it. He's like, dude, you're a medic from the military. Somebody died if you made a mistake. So you have that in your head where you just make the mistakes, but you never do them again. But sometimes you take too long to do it. Just do it and stop worrying about it being perfect. Just get it done. In my industry, right? Somebody could not get their house. So it's big deal. If it's a refinance, no big deal. They don't get the refinance, but that's not going to life or death, but no one ever has that. But I understand what he says. And one of the reasons I do this is so that I can meet people like you to help other people like me understand things that, just like I said, our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. How do we figure out how not to have major defeats though? Right? Have some, but not a ton of them, and have people in place that are there to help us. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because about the coaching, I think, and I said this before, it's very important to be coached by somebody.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I love how you kind of reflect on this, is that it's very powerful to take in the lessons from other people. I mean, this is why we have the industry of of self-help books and leadership books and books in general, reading those books and hearing from people as they talk, sharing the lessons that people have learned. They help you to see what they did to overcome these challenges, which is awesome. It is not to say that you won't have your own challenges, but it helps you to see, what helped them to overcome their own situations. So you can make your own mistakes. And what I love about all the learnings that I've had, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, is that you integrate the things that are meaningful for you and that are helpful for you in the moment. And then you leave what doesn't really integrate for help you in that moment. And then eventually, as you go along your path, you find that some of those lessons that people try to teach you, they reappear sometimes, and they're meant for you at different times in your life. I know it's real for me.
Right. Well, you can relate this to your kids. I don't know if you have kids, but
Yes.
you tell them something, right? You can tell them until you're blue in the face, and then somebody else tells them 3 years later, and they're like, oh my, did you know this? And it's like, I've been telling you that for 10 years. All of a sudden, it takes somebody else to tell you that. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, it's the Holy Grail. But,
Yeah.
and that's, things come to you. And that's why I tell my kids, you don't need this now. I'm going to tell you about it because I want to make sure. And that's how I deal with my clients, is I tell them everything, whether they want to hear it or not. So that way I know for a fact that that issue is not happening. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, even if you plant the seed, it's like, you plant a seed so that people can know that that's there, but ultimately, even they might need to learn for themselves by actually going through the process. Yeah.
Right. And sorry about that. I could have swore I put my thing on do not disturb, and it didn't. But that was
Right.
Apple, I tell you. So I heard it. I don't know if you heard it, but it was like going through my head. So what do you have the perfect client? Do you have who is there somebody that you help more and that you look for, or is there a certain level, or do you help people at all different levels? I'm trying to, because some coaches are good at one thing. I know a guy, he's good up to a certain point of a company making this amount of money. And once they start making over that or building greater, that's a totally different person. He's like, you need somebody else for that. Do you have that?
I do. So I've worked with across multiple industries and what have you. But if I were to describe two different personas that are my ideals, because they, the important thing about my work is that for me to bring my A game into my work, I have to have people who are on the other side of the table who really light me up too. I have to be inspired to inspire. And those people are either entrepreneurs who are looking to make something big happen in the world, who are willing to really step it up and create something, game changing in their industry. But they're willing to put the work in, to work with a coach to help them to see that maybe they're showing up the wrong way, maybe they're engaging with their people in the wrong way, and they're willing to do the work to change how they're showing up. So that's one person who I really love working with. And the other person is a leader inside of an organization of varying degrees, varying sizes, who has gotten to this place where they've had, like, I always call them accomplished leaders, because they've done great work. Sometimes they don't even realize how accomplished they are, but they've gotten to this place where, like, gosh, I don't know what my next challenge is. I don't know what to do next. I'm feeling a bit like I've gotten here, but now what? And that person is, I love working with that person because I allow them to step into their greatness by stepping away from their pattern and seeing that there's more to be had, whether it's inside the doors of where the company they're in, or outside. It's really, what I call it is reigniting their spark.
Gotcha. Question for you. All right. So I'm trying to get to, we talked about your perfect client, what you want to help with. If somebody's listening to this, how do they look at where they are to figure out where they need, if they need somebody like you, or how to figure out what coach they need, or how do you, you understand what I'm trying to get people
Yeah.
to understand that, because maybe they want to get to that next level, but they're not at that level. Right. So how do I get, I'm self, because some people go, I got step 1, 2, 3 here, go through this. And then if you, I'm just trying to see if you have anything to help people who are listening to this who say, well, I don't think I'm there yet. How do they know? Because I've had, one example, I'll let you answer. I have people who call me who want to get a house, right? And this is, and they are like, I don't know if I can buy. And they got $100,000, they got an 800 FICO score, right? And they got an amazing job. And then I have people who call me, have no money, a horrible job, and they think they can get a house, where the other people don't know if they can qualify. So what I'm getting at is, sometimes people who really need the help don't think they're at that point. So how do you help them get there?
Yeah, I often think about this as the coaching paradox, right? Because the people who most need the help might not know they need the help. I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge. But I think the starting point is really, going through an assessment, spending some time, really before getting on the phone, is understanding, have you checked this person out? Have you looked at, who the coach is? If you think that you want a coach, or you think you could use a little bit of help, explore how that person shows up. What is the messaging that person shares? Does it resonate with you? If you find that, like for me, if people feel like the messages that I share, social media, podcasts, books, things like that, resonate with them, then it's a starting point. They know that I'm going to be the person who's going to help them on their journey. But then we still have to have a conversation and see if they're a fit. And it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. I need to also assess with them to see if they're in the right place. So I need to qualify them just as much as they need to qualify themselves, and see if we're a match to work together to create, because we're co-creating together. So I'm not sure if that truly answers your question, but ultimately it comes down to, them getting a taste of what it is to be coached by the right person, and then matching up with the right person to ensure you have the good situation.
Right, which is really, again, that's hard to do. I know somebody who created a master app or whatever to get connected to masterminds, because a lot of them still, no one wants to take your money, but they're not amazing masterminds. It's finding the right coach that's going to work with you. And that's, and I was looking at your website. I wasn't ignoring you. I was trying to see if you had an answer I was looking for on there, but I'm trying to get to where people want to ask questions and go to that next step, because I guarantee you there's a lot of people who are going to be listening to this saying, okay, I've been running my business for this long. I know I'm there, but I don't know if this is the step I need to go to. How do I figure that out? And I know you kind of did it, and it's not something that you can just tell everybody. I'm not looking for you to help everybody, because you can't help everybody. Each person needs a different coach, different person, but you need somebody, right?
Yeah. Think about this is why coaching is it's a very personal thing. If you're going to be working with somebody to be your thought partner, you're a person who's going to help you on a journey to create the life that you want, to unlock your potential, whatever language you want to really use to talk about what it is you're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, it's an intimate experience. And the coach who's going to be successful with you is not going to treat it lightly. They're not going to see this as like, okay, come in, let's step through these steps and then move you on. Okay, next, let's move on. They're seeing it as, I want to help you. I want to see you fly. I want to see you do the things that are going to make you come alive. And that means that I'm going to be a champion for you. I'm not going to please you. I'm going to serve you. And that means it could at times get uncomfortable. So if we don't trust each other, this won't work.
Totally agree with what you said. But again, everybody needs to look at coaching. They need to look at it, and if they don't know, you need a coach. I don't care what level you're at. You need a coach, whether it's the beginning coach or level, whatever, all the way through. You need that person, and it's hard to understand that, and it's really hard to pay for that, right? Because people think it's a cost. No, it's an investment in yourself. You need to understand that. And the problem is people don't realize that. They look at it as a cost. Well, I'll get the coaching when I'm at this level because I can't afford it right now. I'm going to tell you right now, everything I've ever done, I couldn't afford it at the time I did it, right? And then I was able to afford it because I did it. You understand what I'm getting at with that? And that's what you have to look at. Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? But also look at where you were last year, right? We talked about this early on about how don't assess yourself with somebody else. Assess yourself with how much you've grown, but you also need to know where you want to grow to, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll summarize it in a way that is, to me, the biggest thing that people need to deal with is anything is possible if you're willing to put in the resources to make that happen. And those resources are a couple things. It could be financial resources. It could be the resources of time, because that's also something people feel they might not have enough time to actually commit to something like this. Or it could be emotional resources. Like they may not want to reveal their what's inside of them. But guess what? On the other side of all of that is a life of fulfillment, a life of living larger than what you're living right now, if that's what you really want. So you may be holding yourself back by not committing those resources in the right place. So I think that's one thing that is really, holding people back. It's not just financial; it's all those things. And one of the things that I'll share, because this is a quote that has driven me for a long time. If you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything. So what I mean by that, for people who are like emotions, feeling, what do you mean? It really means that if you allow yourself to open up to all of the range of possibilities, to get uncomfortable, then you can have just about anything. When you step into rooms when you feel like you don't belong, then that actually is the best place to be.
Yeah. Someone says that they want to be the dumbest person in the room. Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to want that. But for myself, my coach has been pushing me to do everything that's uncomfortable. I told you, I think in the beginning, I do radio, and that's not uncomfortable. That's easy for me because I've been doing that show for 3.5 years. But live radio, taking over somebody else's radio, where you have to get callers to call in and talk to listeners, and there's nobody in the room but you. That's very uncomfortable, right? Because you have to come up with and talk and just talk about different things. So I push myself all the time to do more things and being uncomfortable, which a lot of people don't want to do that. You have to do that in order to grow. You have to make yourself uncomfortable if you want to get better at whatever it is. You should, if you're comfortable, you never grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about it oftentimes because I'm a big time adventure freak. I love going on adventures and traveling and things like that. But I've traveled places by myself. I've been to places all over Europe and Asia that I've done by myself. And you think at first you're like, oh my God, what the heck are you thinking? Like doing that by yourself. But the reality is once you start doing it, you start to realize that, you can do these things. You can step out into the world and, make things happen on your own. And I know you have your own experiences of this, I'm sure, where you just do these things. And then before you know it, they become, you learn from experience and intuition builds from that. And then before you know it, you're just doing it.
That's every live I've ever done now, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I was on stage a month or two ago at one of Steve Sims events, and I got up there. I'm like, give me a live any day, right? This, because on stage is totally different than a live, and I said that to the audience, and it's amazing how much I connected to them, because people can realize a lot of people don't like doing lives, but that's easier than doing these things, or being on stage where a bunch of people are looking at you, because here you don't know how many eyeballs are on you until later, right? So but it's important to just put yourself out there so much now that we never had this stuff before. It was so expensive. You had to go to TV, other stuff, but you can do it a lot. And what I'm getting at is you have to be uncomfortable. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I know a lot of people go, I don't want to do video because until I lose some weight. It's like, we all know how heavy you are. We all know what you look like. We were talking about earlier coaching. Well, it doesn't look like I'm doing well with my stronger you coach.
Yeah.
I actually have lost weight, but it's like one of those things. It's life. Things get in the way, things work, you name it. It's all about having a balance and having the people in the right places and figuring out, do what you do best in life. That's it at work. That's all you need to do. And you need to get to that point. And Tony, I really appreciate being on the show today. Anything else you want to add before we go?
Well, I just, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. This has been a lot of fun. And I think, if there's a conversation that you're holding back from having right now, have it. I mean, there's just have those conversations that you're in fear of having with people, or maybe even with yourself. If there's something that you're afraid to do, what are you waiting for? So
there you go. Drop the mic. For people to know, you have a podcast, so let's let people know where that podcast is. What's the name of it?
Sure. Yeah, the name of the podcast is called The Virtual Campfire, and you can find that on my website, but you can also find it on any podcasting channels you listen to. And again, the website is inspiredpurposecoach.com, and you can find all types of fun things there as well.
Tony, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And if you enjoyed today's episode, all you need to do is follow and let us know. And again, Tony, thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.